Hey there, Jonny May here, and welcome to this week's quick tip where I'm going to teach you everything that you need to know about jazz chords. Now, do you ever wonder how to take an ordinary major chord like this and make it sound super jazzy, or how to take a minor chord like this and also make it sound beautiful and jazzy? Well, in today's lesson, I'm going to show you my 5-step process for how to take any chord and instantly make it sound jazzy. So let's go ahead and dive in. Alright, in this lesson, we're going to go over the 3 chords that we'll see 99% of time in jazz. These are major chords, minor chords, and dominant chords. Alright, we're going to start with the simplest chord, major chords. And for starters, a major chord, if you played it on C, would be C, E, and G, right? This is a simple C major triad. Now, what is the first step to taking a chord like a C major and making it sound jazzy? Well, the next step is to add the 7th to this chord, and the 7th is the B. Okay? Now there's 3 ways that you can come up with the 7th of a major chord. The first way is to stack one more third interval on top of the top note of the major chord. So this is a third interval, this is a third interval, and then we do one more third interval, and that's the 7. The second way to come up with the 7th of a major chord is to play the scale, and the 7th will be the 7th note of the scale. So if we start on C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the 7 is the B. The third way to come up with the 7th of a major 7 chord is to play the note a half step below the root of the chord. In this case, it's a C, so we go down a half step to B, and congratulations, you've just played a C major 7 chord. Now, before I teach you the next step, if you're enjoying this lesson, please hit the like button and be sure to subscribe to the channel for more videos just like this. Now, what's the next step to making your chords sound jazzy? Well, the next step is to add the 9th of the chord. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take this 7th chord and we're going to add a D to it. And now it's sounding even a little bit more jazzy. Now, there are 3 ways to figure out the 9th of the chord. The first and the easiest way is to just stack one more third on top of the B, and that is the 9th of the chord. So in other words, we're just stacking notes, we're skipping every other note, and we come up with our 9th chord. The second way to come up with a 9th chord is to actually count all the way up from the root note by playing the scale. So we play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and so that is the 9th. The third way, and also kind of an easy way to come up with the 9th, is that the 9th is a whole step above the root, which is C here. So if we play the D, that is also the 2nd note of the scale, and so you could think of the 9 as the 2nd note, or the missing note, a whole step above the root. And so now we have a beautiful C major 9 chord. Alright, the next step to making this chord sound jazzy is to play a beautiful chord called a rootless voicing chord. And here's how it works. If we take this C major 9 chord and we get rid of the root, and now play the full chord with our left hand, we have what's called a rootless voicing chord. This is a very important chord to know if you want to play jazz piano. And what makes this chord so special is that there is no root in the chord, okay? So the way that we typically play rootless voicing chords is 1, either with a bass player, meaning the bass player will play the root, or you could jump up from the root down here on the C and play your beautiful rootless voicing chord this way. So if you're playing solo piano, or if you're not playing with a bass player, then I would recommend still playing the root down on the bottom, but then when you play the chord, there is no root in the chord. Now, there are 2 ways to play your rootless voicing chord. The first way is the way that I just showed you, which is like this, but you can also invert your rootless voicing chord, and the most common way of doing this is putting the 7th on the bottom of the chord. So let's take the E and the G, let's put it on the top, and now let's play our rootless voicing chord up here. Okay, so this is the exact same chord, we're just inverting the notes or changing the order of notes in the chord. Now, there are actually names for each of these positions. If you play the rootless voicing chord with the 3rd on the bottom, we call this an A voicing chord. And if you play the rootless voicing chord with the 7th on the bottom, we call this a B voicing chord. All right, let's play both of these rootless voicing chords with the included backing track. You'll hear 4 clicks, and we're gonna go ahead and jam on these chords. Here we go. Let's start on the A voicing. You can jump from the root to the chord. Let's give it a shot. Let's get the low C in there. Or you can do the high C. Okay? Let's play the B voicing. Here we go. Maybe jump from the root up to the chord, or maybe the low C. By the way, you can download the backing track plus the lesson sheet music, which you're seeing up here on the top left of the screen. You can also change the key of this entire lesson with the click of one button with our smart sheet music, so I'll put a link to all of that below. All right, before I teach you how to turn minor chords into jazz chords, I want to briefly show you an alternate way that you can make major chords sound super jazzy with what are called 6/9 chords, and it's actually a very simple approach. So how do you get this 6/9 sound? Well, you're basically going to start with a C major chord like this, and instead of adding the 7th, which is what we did earlier, we're going to add the 6 or the A. Okay, so basically we're going to count up from the first note of the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's the A, and we're going to add it to our C major chord, and this turns it into what's called a C6 chord, and it's also a very jazzy way of playing a C major chord. Now, what is the next step to making it sound jazzy? Well, we're going to add the 9th, which we did earlier, and if you recall, the 9th is the D, and if you don't remember the 9, remember it's a whole step above the root note. Okay, so we're going to add this D on the top, and now we have a beautiful chord called a C6/9. It's a C6, and we're adding the 9 to it. Okay, so now we're really close to playing our rootless voicing chord, and the way we do this is we're going to get rid of the root on the bottom like we did earlier, and now let's put that root down low, grab that low C, play your chord, and doesn't that sound beautiful? And once again, this is a jazzy way of playing a major chord, and you can do this with any major chord in jazz. Let's say you saw an F major chord. You wanted to make it sound jazzy. Well, you make it into a 6/9 chord. The way you do this is you add the 6th note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's the D, and then the 9 would be G. And if you can't remember the 9, just remember it's a whole step above the F. And so there is our F6/9, and so you could get rid of the root on the bottom, and you could play it just like this. Now recall earlier I said we have an A voicing and a B voicing, so we're going to do the same thing on our 6/9 chord. So let's go back to our C6/9, which is here. Okay, that's our C6/9. Now what if you wanted to play the B voicing? Well, on this chord you're going to build your B voicing on the 6. So we're going to put the 6 on the bottom, take the 3rd and the 5th, and we're going to put it on the top. Okay, so it's a lot like our major 9 rootless voicing chord that we talked about earlier. For the B voicing on that chord, we're building it on the 7, and for this chord, we're going to build it on the 6, because we can almost think of the 6 as a substituted note for the 7. Okay, so that's our C6/9 using a rootless voicing chord in the B position. Okay, so let's grab the C on the bottom. We can play it like that. And if you want to get a really nice low C, you can grab that down there and then play the chord like that. All right, let's jam with the backing track on these chords. We'll start with the rootless A voicing. Here we go. Here it is. Maybe grab the root. Maybe the low root. Okay, let's do the B voicing. Let's grab the root on the bottom. Maybe the low root. All right, next we're going to talk about minor chords, but before we do that, if you're enjoying this lesson and you want to do a deep dive on all of the topics that we've been discussing, I'll put a link below to our Major 7 Chords course, our chord extensions course, where you can learn more about 9th chords and 13 chords, and also our Rootless Voicing Chords course. All right, next we're talking about minor chords and how do you take an ordinary chord like a C minor and make it sound beautiful and jazzy. And once again, we're going to go through our simple 5-step process to turn it into a gorgeous jazz chord. So the first step is to play a simple minor chord, and this chord is a C minor. Okay, very, very simple. Now, what is step number 2? How do we make this chord sound jazzy? Well, the next step is to add the flat 7 to the chord, and that note is a B flat. Now, there are 3 tricks to figuring out the flat 7 of a chord. The first way is to take the top note of your minor chord and go up 3 half steps. So 1, 2, 3, there's the minor 7 chord. You could also go down 2 half steps from the root. So if you put the C on the top and you go down 2 half steps, 1, 2, there is the flat 7 of the chord. You could also figure out the flat 7 by lowering the 7th note of the C major scale. So if you play the C major scale up the piano, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you lower that note to a B flat, that is your flat 7. So congratulations, you just learned how to play a C minor 7 chord, which is a very common chord that you'll see in jazz. Now, what is the next step? Well, the next step is you're going to add the 9th to the chord, just like we did earlier on our major chords. So the 9th is going to be the D, and it's the same 9 as we had on the major chords. The 9th is always going to be a whole step above the root, okay? So that's going to be the D, and we play it up here, and this is called a C minor 9 chord. Now, you are so close to making this chord sound beautiful and jazzy, and so the next step is to take this C minor 9 chord and turn it into a rootless voicing. So we're going to get rid of the root on the bottom, and we're going to play the full chord with our left hand. There's no root in the chord, but guess what? We're going to add a root on the bottom. So let's grab a low C here, play your chord. Doesn't that sound beautiful? Once again, this is a rootless voicing chord, and this is how professional jazz musicians take an ordinary chord like C minor and make it sound really hip and jazzy. Now, that's the A voicing of the chord. Recall that the A voicing is built on the 3rd of the chord. Well, you could also play the B voicing, and the B voicing is built on the 7th of the chord. So let's take the bottom 2 notes of our A voicing, E flat and G, and let's put them on the top, E flat and G. And now we have a really cool, crunchy C minor 9 chord, and this is the B voicing. So let's put that C on the bottom again, grab that low C, and grab your chord. Doesn't that sound amazing? And if that's too far of a jump, you could play the higher C just like that and grab your chord. All right, let's play our minor rootless voicing chords with the included backing track. Here we go. Here it is. Start on that A voicing. Maybe grab the low C on the bottom. That sound great? Okay, let's do the B voicing. Here we go. Let's grab that low C. Now, recall earlier on major chords that we had the alternate way of playing them? Well, you can do the same thing on minor. You can actually play the same minor chord, but get a little bit different sound. This is called the minor 6-9 sound. So I want to show you how to build this alternate version of minor. Okay, so step number 1 is to start with your minor chord. This is C minor. And step 2, instead of adding the flat 7 that we talked about earlier, we're going to add the 6, the A, okay? And it gives it a very cool jazzy sound, really, really nice sound. Once again, the 6 comes from the major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is your A. So this is a C minor 6 chord, okay? So that's step 2. Step number 3 is to add the 9. We're recall the 9 is the D. Doesn't that sound amazing? Okay, C minor 6-9. Again, it's a very cool way of playing a C minor chord. This is how jazz musicians play a chord like C minor. They'll actually play a C minor 6-9 instead. All right, so that's step number 3. And step number 4 is to turn it into a rootless voicing. So we get rid of that C on the bottom. We play the full chord with our left hand. And then what you want to do is separate the notes. So we're going to add a root on the bottom. There's the low C and our super jazzy C minor 6-9 chord. Doesn't that sound amazing? Now, just as we had an A and a B voicing with our other chords, we're also going to play a B voicing on this chord. So how do we build our B voicing? Well, we're going to take these bottom 2 notes and we're going to put it on the top here, just like this. So this chord has the 6 on the bottom and the 5 on the top. And let's go ahead and grab a low root, grab that low C, and there's our beautiful C minor 6-9 chord. All right, let's go ahead and play these chords with the included backing track. Here we go. We'll start on the A voicing. You can grab a low C on the bottom if you'd like. Let's do a B voicing. Doesn't that sound great? You can grab a low C here. All right, before I teach you our final chord type, which are called dominant chords, if you want to do a deep dive on minor 7 chords, check out our minor 7th chord courses at the link below. All right, we've covered the 2 most common chords that you'll see in jazz, which are major chords and minor chords. The 3rd most common chord you'll see in jazz is called a dominant 7 chord, and dominant 7th chords sound like this. They're very cool, kind of bluesy sounding jazz chords, and they're very, very important to know if you want to play jazz. Okay, what is step number 1 for playing a dominant chord or a dominant 7th chord? Well, you start with a major chord actually. Okay, so we're starting with a C major, but this is not a full dominant 7th chord. In order to make this a C7 or a C dominant 7 chord is to add the flat 7 to this chord. And recall from earlier that the flat 7 is a B flat, okay? So this is actually a C7 or a C dominant 7 chord. It's a major triad on the bottom, and then we're gonna add the flat 7, and recall that the flat 7 is a whole step below the root. So we're gonna go down 2 half steps, that makes a whole step, and we have our C7 chord. Now it's starting to sound jazzy, but not quite jazzy enough. So how do we take it to the next level and add some beautiful jazz colors? Well, the next step is to add the 9th to the chord, just like we did on our previous chords. So let's add the D to this chord, and now let's play the full chord. Ooh, that sounds pretty nice. Kind of reminds me of Debussy and a lot of his music, okay? So now our 7th chord has the 9th on it, and we got a little bit of color. Now we call this a C9 chord because it's a C7 chord, but we're adding the 9 to it. So anytime you call a chord a 9th chord, it implies that you're playing all of these notes beneath it. The 1, the 3, the 5, and in this case the flat 7 because it's a dominant chord. Now this sounds great, but we can make it sound even more jazzy, and so you're going to add 1 more note to your dominant 7 chord, and that is the A. Okay, so add that A to the chord, and now let's play the full chord. Okay, doesn't that sound beautiful? Now we call the A the 13 of the chord because it's literally 13 notes above the C. So if we played the C major scale all the way up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, you would play the A. But there's actually an easier way to figure out the 13 of any chord, and the 13 is actually just the 6th note of the major scale. So if we played C major, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that is also the 13, okay? So this chord is called a C13 chord or a C dominant 13 chord, and by calling it a C13, it implies that we include the root 3rd, 5th, the 7th, the 9th, we're gonna skip the 11 because it doesn't really work with this chord, and we're gonna play the 13. Now we're so close to playing our rootless voicing chord. The next step is to actually remove the 5th of the chord. We're gonna get rid of that G in our left hand because the G is not a very important note in creating chords, and it's actually somewhat common for jazz musicians to remove the 5th of the chord, and oftentimes they'll substitute it for another kind of crunchy sounding note. All right, so once you have this chord, the next step is to actually move your 13 down 1 octave. So we're gonna take that A, we're gonna put it down here, and so now our C13 chord is much closer together. And so once you have it like this, you're super close to playing your rootless voicing chord, because we're gonna get rid of that C, that root on the bottom, and now we're gonna play this chord with our left hand just like this, okay? Now if you play it like this, it may not sound very good in your ear, but if you put the C on the bottom and play the chord, it sounds super cool. So this is how professional jazz musicians play chords like a C7 chord. Instead of playing this, they'll play that, which sounds so much cooler. Now this is the A voicing of the chord, and recall that the A voicing is built on the 3rd. You could also play this as a B voicing. And so for the B voicing, we're gonna take those bottom 2 notes off the bottom, we're gonna play them on the top, and now we're gonna play this with our left hand, and we have a very cool C13 chord. Let's put the C on the bottom and play the chord, and it sounds amazing. All right, we're gonna play this one with a backing track, but before we do this, if you wanna do a deep dive on dominant 7 chords, check out our dominant 7 courses at the link below, and let's go ahead and play these chords with the included backing track. Here it is. We'll start with the A voicing. Let's grab a root on the bottom. Let's play the B voicing. That sounds great. And maybe throw a root on the bottom. Did you enjoy the lesson? If you did, please let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, be sure to check out pianowithjonny.com. We have over 1,000 step-by-step lessons for all playing levels, where you'll learn your favorite songs, styles, and how to improvise at the piano. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.